I believe most of you probably are already aware that the fundamental design of the American high school is well over 100 years old, and to this day has changed remarkably little, which is a scary thought given how much everything else has changed. It was designed at a time when we knew very little, not much, about teaching and learning. Late 1800s, 1890-ish into the 1900s, a century ago. It was designed at a time when very few teenagers actually even went to high school. We developed and we ramped up basically an industrial revolution factory model of a secondary school system with the very noble aim of getting more of our teenagers into and through high school. The design was based on efficiency, cost, and scale. It was not based on sound educational practice. It's just true. It was never a good system, but in a different time, it was tolerable. It was tolerable in a very different time. When Bill Gates several years ago offered that the American high school was obsolete, my only objection was that implied that there was a time when it wasn't. In the world we live in today, the ever-changing nature of work, the ever-changing nature of civic participation, the new global economy, which, by the way, is not new anymore, so educators need to stop calling it that, global communications, global everything, and not so much the nature of technology itself, but the pace of the advancement of technology. A system that was once tolerable is now horribly insufficient, and we've known it for some time. In 1983, the report, A Nation at Risk, commissioned by the President of the United States, offered this idea, that if our educational system had been imposed upon us by a foreign power, we would have considered it an act of war. We have done a lot in the last 20, 30 years to make our secondary schools better. Unfortunately, so much of what we've done has been aimed at improving the system, not overhauling and redesigning the system. And the distinction is an absolutely critical one. The metaphor is harsh, but the time for rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic has long passed and never made any sense. And for granted, I'm one of those educators that was out there. We're doing a lot more than moving deck chairs around. We're moving all sorts of things around on the Titanic. We need to get at the overall design. We need to restructure and rethink some really big things that we haven't tackled yet. 15 million teenagers enrolled in our high schools, most of them in school right now. The overwhelming majority of them, 90% plus, are in public schools, charter, vocational, magnet. About 7 or 8% are in private schools. Most of those are actually Catholic schools. The good news, that we now have all of our kids going to high school, which is awesome. The bad news, I would venture a guess, and it's a guess, and it's probably an optimistic one, that probably no more than a few hundred of those high schools are actually breaking away from the 100-year-old design that most of us are stuck in. And they are serving a fraction of a percentage point of those 15 million students. Fortunately, good, hardworking, dedicated kids supported by phenomenal teachers, creative teachers, doing things they're not supposed to do oftentimes, and loving parents are getting some good things out of this system. There are good things happening, absolutely. But what we need to remember is they're happening despite the way our schools are designed, not because of the way our schools are designed. Imagine what would be possible if we could get the design right. Imagine what would be possible to get the design right. So let's be really clear about what we're talking about here. I believe there are 5 critical root core problems or solutions, if you want to look at it that way, with the design of the American high school. These are the things that have to change. These are the things that must change. These are the things that will drive all kinds of powerful good stuff, and these are the things that are hard to change. The first 4 of these, I think a lot of you are probably going to be familiar with, and I'm going to run through them quickly. The 5th, I think, is going to be new to you. The problem may not be new, but I think the solution will be. It's new to me, and it's the thing I'm most excited about talking with you about this morning. So let's begin. Number 1, we need to move from an instructional model that is dominated by delivery to one that is much more constructivist. That doesn't mean anything, does it? What does that mean? It means we need to get less teachers at the center explaining things, what I'm doing now, less teachers at the center explaining things, more students at the center figuring things out, right? Creative thinking, problem solving, more of those, less memorization. A lot of good stuff is happening on this one, but unfortunately we're running into all kinds of constraints and problems because everything's tied together. And there's a lot of things that are keeping us from getting as far as we should. Number two, this one's easy. We need to move from a system that was designed for isolation to one that is designed for real-world immersion. Apprenticeships, internships, field studies, service work, community projects at the heart of the curriculum, built into the school day schedule. The essence of what we do, not at the edges, which is often what we're doing now. Our schools were designed at a time when adolescents were experience-rich and information-poor. Today, our kids are drowning in information, and they are starving for real responsibility and for real experience. Number three, we need to move from grading and assessment systems that are designed to rank and sort our students through a ridiculously complicated scoring system that we call the game of school and just frankly gets in the way of real learning, to grading and assessment systems that are simpler, directly connected to learning goals, and that are actually helpful in diagnostic ways to students and to teachers. We only need 3 or 4 points on a grading scale. That's it. 3 or 4 points. The traditional A to F scale with pluses and minuses, that's 13 points. It's not bad, but it's too many. 12 of them are passing, 1 of them is failing. The traditional percentage system, 0 to 100, you often see 2 decimal points with that one, right? When you go online to check your kids' grades, that's a 10,000-point grading system. 5,999 ways to fail. Makes no sense. Number 4, we need a system grounded in learning and achievement, not time. I think this one is the ultimate insult of the Industrial Revolution factory model. Grade 9, grade 10, grade 11, grade 12, 4 years, done, here's your diploma. If we actually believe that students should demonstrate that they've learned something to get credit in a course and there's things they should know and be able to do and have learned in order to earn a diploma, is it not insane to think that a high school full of teenagers who are all phenomenally different from one another are all going to graduate at exactly the same time? The odd thing is that there's a tremendous amount of good work happening on this one. In Maine and New Hampshire in particular, around competencies and proficiencies and what it means to earn a credit and getting away from seat time, but nobody's talking about the 4-year assumption. We're stuck. We're absolutely stuck. Number 5, you can see probably that my convictions are pretty clear and pretty strong about the first 4, and there's a lot of educators that share them. What I'm about to get at is a little bit different. It's thinking. It's a work in progress. It's rough. And it's really an invitation for you to kind of hopefully grapple with it, maybe be inspired by it, maybe we can figure this one out together, okay? So think about it. Before I get at it, I want to say real quickly how I sort of stumbled into this idea. For the better part of the past 25 years, my work life has been high school, high school, high school. What works in high school, what doesn't work in high schools, high school teachers, high school students, parents of high school students, high school this, high school that. High school. I recently put myself on a sort of a self-imposed sabbatical of sorts, and I'm reading, and I'm writing, and I'm thinking, I'm learning about anthropology, I'm studying quantum physics, I'm exploring the neuroscience of consciousness, I am getting at root causes and looking at origins and essence, and not surprisingly, my focus has changed. My perspective is bigger. What a refreshing gift. The world, what matters in the world, what's wrong with the world, the mystery, the fragility of it all, the beauty of it all, the world, the nature of it, the mess of it, what matters most. So, number 5, we need to move from a high school curriculum organized around academic disciplines to a high school curriculum organized around whatever makes it relevant, engaging, inspiring, and purposeful, in line with a vision for what high school really needs to be, and in line for a better world and a future. We need to organize the curriculum around what matters most. We need to organize the curriculum around what matters most. Let me explain. This is what we currently do. This is how we organize the high school curriculum. This happens to be from our local high school, Portsmouth High School, course catalog for the 2017-18 school year. It's called Graduation Requirements. This is the way the curriculum's organized, and this is the universal norm with some tweaking adjustments across this entire country. This is the way we do it. And it has been since the Committee of 10 met in 1892. The Committee of 10. This is the norm. But you're probably thinking, well, duh, and how else could we possibly do this? Well, let's think about this for a minute. I believe, because I spent a lot of time thinking about high school, that if we could get people to come together, kids, parents, students, business leaders, everybody, and somehow erase from our heads kind of everything we know about high school, because it's drilled into our heads pretty well, and sort of start with a conversation about what kids should know and be able to do and experience when they're teenagers, and kind of be thinking about the world and a better world and better people, and then talk about what it should be, I think it would be something entirely different than what we have. Let me share with you in a very fast-paced manner. Don't worry, there won't be a test on this. I want to give you the gist of it. These are some of the things I've heard over the last 25 years working in high schools from parents, from kids, from community members. Forgive the pace. Hard work, yes, but work filled with relevance, with purpose. Grades should be secondary, not the primary focus. Real-world experience, real responsibility, learning by doing, learning how to solve problems, thinking creatively, puzzling things out, inventing things, less is more. Deeper learning, not just passing tests and then forgetting it all. High school graduates who have character, integrity, and compassion. Honest, responsible, caring. Grades should be helpful and diagnostic, not just labels slapped on our students before moving on. That's from a teacher. Persistence, grit, resilience, over and over again. Understanding and celebrating diversity. It is the world we live in. Environmental stewardship and understanding that this planet is our home. High school diplomas should really mean something, not just 4 years of showing up. Students who know themselves, their strengths, their weaknesses, their aspirations, and know how to take care of themselves. Financial responsibility and understanding what it takes to make a living. Preparation to be thoughtful and engaged citizens in our nation's participatory democracy. That's mine, actually. And one of my favorites, all the wonderful things in the district mission statement. Right? You with me? About global citizenship, critical thinking, lifelong learners, caring and compassionate people. That doesn't really seem to show up anywhere else. Those are the things I want for my kids. And to be fair, I've also heard along the way things like this. Life is hard, unfair, and filled with disappointment and a lot of crap. High school should be the same. But I'm leaving those things out. Except for that one. I am certain that we can do better than this. I'm embarrassed that it took me 25 years to get at it, but not many people are talking about it. This is a really good way to organize knowledge. It's a pretty good way to actually organize faculty as well. It is a horrible way to organize a high school curriculum if your goal is engagement, relevance, and purpose, if you care about the future. So, what can we do? How about this? This doesn't overlay, augment, or complement what you just saw. This replaces it. What you just saw disappears. 3 core strands. One of them is care of yourself. One of them is care of our planet. The third is care of each other or getting along with one another. And then a 4th foundational strand called finding your path, right? Students graduate when they've met all the learning goals in each of the 4 strands, and they've successfully completed a culminating project or thesis in each of the strands. Got it? So let me give you another fast-paced quick look at what something like this might look like. I have begun, thanks to TEDx, drafting a program of studies of sorts that's about 13 pages long at this point. So let me give you a couple quick things. Again, there will be no test, and forgive the pace. So we have a couple pages of learning goals for each of the 4 strands, numbering about 15, 20, 25 each. First, care of oneself. Mind, body, spirit. The human body, its evolution, all its systems, how to care for it. An understanding of higher level needs, such as love and connection. It's okay to talk about those things in high school. Well, sometimes it's not a good idea. And very practical matters, such as posture, sleep, sun protection, safe driving. An example of just one of the learning goals. Here's one learning goal from that strand. Students will demonstrate an understanding of the human digestive system, the latest science on proper nutrition, and the history and evolution of the human diet from prehistory hunting and gathering through the agricultural revolution and today. Students will also conduct an analysis of their own diet and set goals for improvement. Measurable and clear. Another learning goal focuses on the anatomy and physiology of exercise. Others focus on the brain, mental health, stress, disease, causes, prospective cures for cancer, first aid, CPR training, a given. Looking over the goals in this strand, it is rich in sciences like biology and chemistry, social sciences such as psychology, lots of history. And of course, there's a wide array of literature that fits in this strand, as is the case with all four. A couple examples of culminating projects or theses in this strand: a student with diabetes produces a research paper on finding a cure for the disease. A student athlete conducts research on preventing and treating concussions and designs a new piece of equipment. You get the idea. I'll say a couple things from just a few of the other strands. Care of the planet, understanding the world around us, our home, how we interact with it. Flora, fauna, ecosystems that are local communities. Physics and chemistry all around us, to the great expanse of cosmology and astronomy. The history of our impact on the planet, its many species. And hey, here's a real good example of a culminating project or thesis for this one. How about a well-researched position on climate change? Third strand, care of one another, getting along with one another. There's really kinds of three types of learning goals in here. I'm really excited about this one in particular. A few of the goals are in the so-called soft skills area: collaborating, working with diverse contexts, listening skills and such. These things need to be taught and cultivated. They just don't happen. Number two, several goals focused on better knowing one another, exploring and understanding different cultures, art, religions, and history. We need to know about each other in order to get along with one another and the stories that make us who we are. And then third, an array of learning goals organized around the various systems we use to get along with one another: economic, governmental, political, legal, judicial, agriculture, energy production, healthcare, so on. Pretty powerful stuff. And the fourth strand, knowing yourself, your story, your faith, your strengths, your weaknesses, your learning styles, your values, your priorities, your budding passions, beginning to sort out how you intend to live your life, and your post-secondary plans. This is the kind of stuff that usually goes into advisory programs and counseling at the edges of what we do. We're talking about heart and soul of the curriculum. This is part of what we do, and a big focus of it, built in, graded, assessed, real work, graduation requirements, culminating projects and autobiography that hopefully you'll work on for the rest of your life. A work in progress that you continue to revise. The courses are, for the most part, organized around problems and questions, and each course is designed to meet 6, 7, 8 or so learning goals, often spanning 2 or 3 of these strands. Classes are generally co-taught by 2 teachers, each bringing with them 2, 3, or 4 areas of expertise, not just one. Just a few examples of courses. The origins of and solutions to the opioid crisis. What is the ideal way to produce electricity? Is representative democracy the best form of government? What is morality? What are ethics, and where do they come from? Those are some examples of courses. All the courses are designed to meet the various learning goals among the 4 strands and nothing else. If it's not a learning goal within the 4 strands, it's not part of the curriculum. If it's a critical scientific concept, a critical aspect of local, national, and human history, or a fundamental math skill, etc., it's built into the strands, into the learning goals, and into the courses. But to be really clear, we're talking probably about half, not 80%. We're talking about half the content in the typical high school. Is that a trade-off or a sacrifice? No, it is not. Because fast-paced coverage, exactly like I'm doing right now, is not good teaching, and it's not how we learn. It's not how we learn. We do things with depth, and we do things with focus. Writing, literacy, broadly defined communication skills, all integrated across the curriculum. Same goes for fundamental math skills, numeracy, the language of science, all the way up until algebra and geometry. Higher level math is a tricky one, so ask me about that during one of the breaks, and I'd be glad to talk with you about it. Same goes with proper use of technology, integrated across the curriculum. Athletics, done correctly, focused on teamwork, collaboration, discipline, and healthy exercise, fits perfectly. And just to be clear, students that are pursuing work, not post-secondary education right after high school, they still do this, and they do vocational or career training education stuff parallel to it, not in place of this. All of our kids need this. And ideally, if we commit ourselves to a foreign language, and it's ridiculous that we don't in this country, we're missing the boat on it. If we do it K to 8, And if we commit ourselves all to learning the same second language, then it would actually be pretty, Spanish might be a good choice. Then it would fit pretty well in a high school like this. If we're committed to not doing it early on, and if we're committed to choice because we're Americans and we love choice and we want to be able to study Greek and German and French and Latin and a whole lot of other things, then it's a little bit more troublesome. So, that was fast. I hope it gave you a flavor for it. It's rough, it's preliminary, and I hope it has you thinking. I know if you're paying attention, you have questions, and I hope you'll ask them. Ask them of me, ask them of someone. I hope this gets you thinking about it. And I'd be happy to be involved in those conversations. Ask me about money. Yes, we can do this with current spending. I've figured that out, and I'd be glad to share that with you. Ask me about teacher training. That's critical. It's absolutely critical that we rethink teacher training. Ask me why we haven't gotten further in the last 20 or 30 years. I don't know. I have a lot of thoughts and ideas about it, but I have no easy answers. I will tell you that leadership is absolutely critical. Leadership is absolutely critical. We need smart, courageous, and visionary high school principals and superintendents. So if you are one, be those things. If you're not a principal or a superintendent, demand those things. It's a good place to start. The world is a bit of a mess. The world is a bit of a mess, and I believe, quite biased, that high school is probably the answer. I think we've forgotten that. How we educate our kids when they go from being adolescents to young adults, all of them, is absolutely essential, I believe, to our future. But we are stuck. We are really, really stuck. We are 100 years stuck, and we need to get unstuck. Robert Pirsig, this is how I'll end. Robert Pirsig writes about it. He calls it value rigidity. The most striking example of value rigidity is the old South Indian monkey trap. The trap consists of a hollowed-out coconut chained to a stake. The coconut has some rice inside, which can be grabbed through a small hole. The hole is big enough so the monkey's hand can go in, but too small for his fist with the rice in it to come out. The monkey reaches in and is suddenly trapped by nothing more than his own value rigidity. He can't revalue the rice. He can't see that freedom without rice is more valuable. What general advice should we give the poor monkey? Well, the monkey should somehow try to slow down deliberately and go over ground that he has been over before and see if things he thought were important really were important. And well, stop yanking and just stare at the coconut for a while, please. Thank you.